On November 2016, the film Arrival was released, a movie that shows the first human contact with a technological superior race and the events that transpires. You can find different scientific, linguistic, and philosophical concepts. Despite not having a large budget, this film surprised critics, and it even managed to be nominated for Best Film of the Year at the Oscars. Today, we're going to take a look at the different concepts and meanings behind the story of The Arrival. The film begins by showing us the life of Lois Banks, a university professor who was an expert in linguistics. We are also shown the tragic story of her daughter, who suffered from cancer and died at a very young age. This story will be more important later in the film. Soon after, we see the arrival of spaceships, 12 landing in different locations around the planet, and the American government brings in Lois to try to communicate with these beings. This is the basis for most of the film, the attempt of several scientists to communicate with these aliens and to discover what their intentions are. Also, during the course of the film, we are shown several scenes of Lois's life, of what it was like when her daughter was alive. Some people think that the intentions are hostile, which leads to typical conspiracy programs to create theories that lead people to attack these ships. Later, we realize that the purpose of these extraterrestrials was to give humans a universal language, but not just any language, but their own. The language that these beings used was able to modify the individual who uses it, and it allows the person to see into the future. When Lois begins to learn such language, she begins to see her future, a future in which she has a daughter and who is dying of cancer. Here is when it is revealed that the scenes involving Lois with her daughter are actually images of the future. Now, there are several interesting concepts in this movie, beginning with conspiracies. As we know, there are currently hundreds of programs on television, as well as YouTube channels, that promote different conspiracy theories, affirming themselves as facts. If at some point an alien contact were to occur, surely some or most of these channels would try to capitalize on this event and label it as a threat. It is very likely that this would lead people to react violently against these beings, and this is precisely what the film shows us: the danger of following blindly these conspiracy theorists. Obviously, we should never reach a conclusion about an event without evidence. The universal language is another interesting concept. This film affirms that our interpretation of time depends on our language, and that if we learned a special language, we could interpret time in a very different way. When the movie explains that the human brain changes depending on the language we learn, it is not too far from reality. As we know, languages have different tonalities and forms of pronunciation. A group of researchers from Peking University determined that by studying a person's brain while conversing in Mandarin or English, they noticed their brain networks functioning differently, even if they are talking about the same subject. When speaking in English or in Mandarin, different areas of the brain predominate, and this is the same case with other languages. Also, many bilingual people have excelled in having more creativity or even changes in their personality depending on the language they used. If indeed 100% of the inhabitants of our planet spoke the same language, our brain networks would be much similar. Although, of course, we would not have the ability to see into the future as in the movie. But the most important concept of the film is the power of knowledge. This film is shown to us as a science fiction movie about the arrival of aliens, but in actuality, it is not. Many clues are scattered throughout the movie, clues that lead to the real story hidden within the plot. The most important part of the film is the protagonist's decision after she acquires the ability to see into the future. She knows that she will have a daughter and that her child will suffer and die from cancer. Nevertheless, Lois decides to have her child. At the end of the film, we comprehend that the story actually is a drama with philosophical and science fiction nuances. If we had the ability to see into the future, and we find out that the person we love the most will eventually die from a cruel illness, would we still decide to share what little time we have with them? This concept is known as omniscience, or the power to know all things. The protagonist is given a skill that is usually attributed to the gods, but she decides not to evade her future. Even if humanity acquired the ability to see into the future, love will be more important than knowledge. This is the message behind this story. Knowing that what awaits us at the end of the road is tragedy, we will yet take that trip. This approach shares many elements with the movie Interstellar, which states that love transcends time and space. In Arrival, we see exactly that. In the end, the story that hides within the film is not about the alien contact or the mystical universal language, but that if we knew when and how our time with our loved ones will end, we will choose to spend that time with them. Tell me, if we had the ability to look into the future and you saw that you will have a child that will suffer and die a young age from an incurable disease, would you still want to spend what little time you have with the child? Or would you simply avoid it and spare the child's suffering along with your own? Thank you all for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And remember, assume nothing and question everything.